Welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Distortion, episode number 306. My name is Brando, and if you're watching this on Zoom, I am coming to you virtually from Canter's Deli. I'm sure you can tell that I'm not really in Canter's Deli with the terrible green screen that Zoom gives you. However, our guest today is actually in Canter's Deli, Mr. Marc Canter himself. What's going on, Mr. Marc?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It's been a while. I know you do a lot of interviews, especially with the 51st gigs, but we had you on a long time ago with Jack Lou, who I know has helped you with this project, and you guys have been friends for years. So that was a while ago. So it's cool to get to talk to you kind of one-on-one and kind of take my request. Can we Zoom from the Guns N' Roses booth? So thank you for sitting there for me.
Here we are. Here we are, Guns N' Roses booth.
Oh, you know what? See, I can change now. I'm going to have fun with my virtual background so I can actually pretend like I'm part of Guns N' Roses. See, now I'm in the Guns N' Roses booth now too. I put on that famous photo of it's like I'm really there or
I
not.
love that technology. That's the technology that you're using is the same thing. The whole reason why we ended up doing this podcast is because it's here. The technology is really moved forward in the last few years. So it makes it a lot easier to get things done. When we were putting Reckless Road together, we talked about doing part of the deal was to do a book and also a documentary, but documentaries are very expensive and you got to fly people out to interview them and, equipment and rental, it ends up a studio time to mix it and edit it, where a podcast could just, this last year of COVID has really sped things up and everything's going on, on Zoom these days. So we found that what makes it great is if we did a great documentary, what would it be? 2 hours long? If you do a podcast, it could be 100 hours long. Each episode is like 30 minutes, 28 minutes, whatever. And there's no edit. Yeah, a little bit gets on the floor because those interviews are about an hour long and then we end up using 30 minutes. But in a documentary, you would lose 90% of it would be on the cutting room floor. So this way you get more tidbits of what information some editor may think is useless information. That information a fan would love to know about. So it's just more thorough.
That's a good point. How many movies or TV shows or podcasts, there's something comes out, like the things that are left out, the extras, the deleted scenes. And you're like, why was that deleted? That was great because they have to fit into a certain time. And with podcasting, you're right, which is why I've spent, over 300 episodes talking about one band. I don't know how that's happened, but you're absolutely right. And smartly so. So I guess what was the first catalyst? Because I wasn't doing Zoom interviews before the pandemic. So it was when everything shut down, I guess you took time and what can I do now to be creative with
if you watch the news at all during the pandemic, which I'm sure most people started watching the news more, you'd see that instead of having their guests in the studio, they're just at home or, somewhere else. And it just became, at first it was like, okay, that's the best they can do because of COVID. But now COVID's over, they're still doing it. So,
right.
Well, it's not, but it's, it's settled down, things are open. But so it shows you that the world has evolved a little bit and what's acceptable. And there's nothing wrong with what we're doing. We're talking, you see me, I see you, we're all good. So it just makes it nice. I mean, there's so many tidbits. I could tell you so many stories that nobody knows. We're going to talk about, and you decide when, we're going to talk about Slash's audition for Kiss, which everyone's going to say, what? I never heard about that. And if you ask Slash, he might even say, what? I don't remember that, because I once was in an interview with Slash and I brought it up and he looked really confused. But we'll get to that. But there's just little tidbits. Also, Slash was in a Michael Schenker video. Nobody knows this. He played a dead Jimi Hendrix on stage in the song Rock Will Never Die from 1984. Got paid $75 to do that. It was out in the valley somewhere, and we didn't know it was a Michael Schenker video. We got called. He got casted for that to play a dead Jimi Hendrix, and I drove him up there, and we were trying to figure out what band it was, and then I saw Macaulay and I walking around. I thought it was Ted Nugent. So I said, I think you're in a Ted Nugent video. I was so confused. And then all of a sudden we saw Michael Schenker and then I figured it out.
That's cool.
There's little bits of information in these podcasts where we can dig a lot deeper. When we originally did Reckless Road, which is my Guns N' Roses book, Making of the Appetite for Destruction.
Mm-hmm.
This put out in like 2008. When we first did it, it was my scrapbook of all, covers the first 50 gigs, photos, flyers, ticket stuff, clippings from the magazine, ads from Bam Magazine, whatever, just mostly that. And then there's, what we transcribe what they said between those shows, because I recorded all those shows. That makes it fun. You see they're about to play Rocket Queen, and Axl says, "This is the new one. It ain't much, but it's the best I could do. This song is for Barbie. This song is called Rocket Queen." And it's just more powerful, because if that's your favorite song, now you know where it debuted and what he said before he announced it. And it just gives you a little bit deeper. It gives the fans a little bit extra. I wish somebody would have done this for Aerosmith, because I'm a big Aerosmith collector. This would be a treasure trove for me if I, to get this information. It's also good because even if you're not a huge Guns N' Roses fan, but you're a fan of music and how bands get put together, I have the access on, well, I was there with Slash the whole time, but I also can access the people that I know that the world has forgotten about. And like Chris Webber or Rob Gardner, who was, Chris Webber was the original guitar player in Rose and Hollywood Rose, and wrote with Izzy and wrote with Axl, and they lived in his house. So you're getting a perspective of someone that was there, and how they felt watching that evolve and go to the next level and to the next level. Same with Adam Greenberg, who's the drummer for Titus Sloan and Road Crew, and you'll see that he talks about how he knew it was only a matter of time, because he could see that Slash was at 7 levels ahead of him. And even though it worked for what they were doing, he knew that Slash would grow out and move on and, do whatever. So you get these perspectives of not just one person telling the story, or not just a band, even though it's important to have the band member tell the story, because of course they're the celebrity. They're the ones that made the music, and you want to hear what's coming out of the horse's mouth. But unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, sometimes a lot of time has gone by, a little too much alcohol, whatever. And some of these things are blurry, and they weren't paying too much attention to the details. And they even get their own books. They don't do it on purpose. They try to get it right, but they mix stories up, and they mix dates up, and they're a year off, or the wrong place, or the wrong venue, or, things get twisted a little bit. But when you hear it from the people that were only there for a year, and their life stopped in the music business, they remember that as if it were yesterday, because that's all, was just, you're only asking them to remember 1 year. You're asking these guys to remember 35 years of rock and roll. So it's a lot harder sometimes. We did interview Slash, Duff, and Steven when we were putting together Reckless Road. We did it on video, but we transcribed what they said in the book. It was really for, to fill in the book, but also it was for the documentary that we never made. So now that we're doing this, we could, if something comes up in that subject matter, we could cut back to their interviews. Stevens we redid because he wasn't in the best shape back then. And we have an episode that Steven did live with us about a month and maybe 6 weeks ago. And we might get him again, because it took us a long time. We were having internet problems, and by the time we got set up, we only really had like 15 minutes to interview him, and then he had to go do a business meeting. But so it didn't all go as planned, but still we can continue it. It's a short episode. It's not a big deal. But so that's what we're focusing on is I got sidetracked my own story. So my plan was to get this book while they designed the book. Let's see what space, because there was a little bit of information I gave you, what was going on between the shows around that time, or, just what was going on, where they were living, what was going on. And, like for instance, so I was then going to look to see how much room I have and look at this book, look at the page spreads, and then make some comments that weren't in the book yet. But because we interviewed like 20, people like Tom Zutaut and, Mike Klink, who produced the band, the album, and some roadies and some, had a piece of that or were involved in it some way. Steve Thompson, who helped mix the record. Everybody's got good knowledge to add in there. So by the time they added that all in, the book was overfilled. and there was not one smidget of room to get one word in there. So that being said, I didn't get to tell these little tidbit stories that of information, what was going on. Like, I'll just throw one at you now. 1984, when Slash had met Axl, and they were just, in Hollywood Rose, fooling around for about 3 months. He was working at Tower Video on Sunset, and he was basically homeless, but he would find someone's couch to live on, a friend's couch, or even, maybe if he couldn't stay on the couch because the girlfriend or whatever didn't want that him hanging around too long, they'd let him sleep in the car, or he'd hook up with a girl and sleep there. But every now and then he would strike out. And if he struck out and it came 2, 3 in the morning, nowhere to go, he'd go to Tower Video and sleep on the stairwell. And so he told me right around that time, his goal, he set this goal, was to get a gym membership. And if he can get a gym, not to work out, but so he could have a place to shower, no matter where he slept. Even if it was in the back of someone's car, you still need a shower. Now, if you slept at someone's house, you could always use their shower, but that wasn't always the case. So that was the first bar that was set. So these little tidbits of information didn't get in Reckless Road. And now with these podcasts, it's endless. I could get any little detail I want in. And besides that, I don't have all the information. I just have some cool stories to tell. But, like I said, we found earlier, I was telling you that we found Rob Gardner. We couldn't find him at the time of making Reckless Road. The internet wasn't as well. Not everybody had, I don't think Instagram was around then, or what, if it was, I don't think it was. But anyway, maybe there was MySpace, who knows? But there might have been a Facebook, but not everybody was on it. So I was looking for these people, couldn't find them. And actually, I found Tracy Guns, but he didn't want to participate. He was kind of ghosting me because he wasn't sure. Tracy was staying quiet back then, and he didn't go out much. He didn't do much. He wasn't sure. He didn't trust people. But later on, I actually met at a memorial service for a mutual friend. I think that was like 2010, maybe. And he apologized because he got my messages, and he apologized for ghosting me. And he said, if he'd help again. The book was great because it's not anyone's opinion; it's actual facts. It's an encyclopedia of facts put together, and it just, you can't dispute it. It is what it is. That's what it is. That's what happened. So he said he'd help, but now we're looking for him again, and he's gone back to the ghosting. But we contacted his management. Management said he was booked for the next year. So I don't know. That's a podcast takes like 20 minutes to do, but whatever it is, for whatever reason, doesn't really matter, because we did get rescue.
I think you're seeing rescue slowing down a little bit. It's so funny with Zoom. Sometimes it's like a drive-through rescue. You're not getting drunk, I understand. And I will say with Tracy, he's very responsive on Twitter and doing my podcast. Obviously, I wanted to speak with him as well, and said he would not do podcasts. And then I see him all the time. And then I can't reveal how I got in contact with LA Guns manager, but we spoke on the phone, and he likes me. So apparently Tracy maybe actually they said October. So I got to follow up with my interview with Tracy Guns. Maybe, you know what? Maybe he is going to ghost me as well. I'll let you know. Well, no,
I think once he sees these, there's already like 4 episodes out, plus we're doing bonus episodes. Once he sees these, he's going to feel more comfortable, and I'm sure he'll contact me.
Oh yeah, no, he's very cool. I think because, you know what? Just like the reason why we had a little conversation before we started recording, there are just a lot of interviewers out there or podcasts out there that just want salacious stuff. And, he was in Guns N' Roses for, he was in the foundation of it, but he's still making LA Guns music. So I guess, if all people want to talk to him is about Guns N' Roses still since 1985, I get being annoyed by it. But
no, he brings it up. He brings it up. He tweeted something about a month ago, say he found an old picture. Actually, he took it from one of the podcasts that we put out, an ad. And he said, if nothing else, we did start some shit or something like that. So he's obviously aware of it. But I think if he's not comfortable, that's cool. I mean, I remember Tracy and Izzy it must have been at the time they put that together. Because see, when see Tracy was always a rival of Slash's, and even though Tracy had been playing for like 6 years before Slash even picked up a guitar, and he was really good at it, Slash got to his level real quick. You know, Slash was a quick learner, and you can't help it, but they're rivals, because he was in Pirates and Slash was in Titus Sloan, and you know, they're rivals, but they're friends but rivals. But so when Hollywood Rose fell apart, what did Axl do? He joined up with Tracy, and that was like that was like, to Slash, that was like, when I went to help them do some. Axl called me after that and asked me if I could shoot LA Guns for, and get some photos. And I didn't tell Slash because I didn't want him to think that I was betraying him, because I was also friends with Axl. I had, even though they were together only 3 months, I made friends with Axl at that time. But that only was short lived. There was only 2 gigs, and then that fell apart. But they all kind of knew each other. And what I can remember, and even though I knew Izzy back then, because Izzy actually left Hollywood Rose the minute Slash joined. They were like together for one rehearsal, and then he just Izzy disappeared and joined London. But what I do remember is Izzy coming into Canter's with Tracy, and Tracy lived a block away. He lived literally 1 block away. And so they would come sit on the counter and drink coffee, and they were working on music. They didn't have their instruments, but they were like writing and maybe, making melodies and, just writing. And sometimes I'd stop and talk to them for a little bit. And that must have been right around the time that Guns N' Roses started, because Axl had already joined LA Guns, and it fell apart. So why it fell apart, I don't know. But what I make from it is, and because LA Guns got stale for a minute, maybe they still were looking for a singer, and they asked Axl to rejoin, and Axl was, "Oh, if I join you, we're just going to fight again because you're in charge of that band, and and if I join Hollywood Rose, we're going to fight because Axl's in charge of Hollywood Rose, and maybe we should keep our bands and start a side project that we're all together in charge, and there's really no one's in control, and we'll just we'll record some music and we'll have some fun. We're not going to take it too seriously." So that's how Guns N' Roses got together. And the fact that Tracy was in Canter's writing with Izzy, I'm willing to bet you that was probably January of 85, and the start of Guns N' Roses. And so that was lasted like 4 months, because then Tracy and Rob left. So by the time the Appetite for Destruction lineup got together, it's not like they were all strangers, because Duff had actually joined Road Crew for a week. He answered an ad that Slash and Steven put in the Recycler, LA Recycler, and they actually met at Canter's here because it was a good neutral place. And Duff didn't stick around because there was no singer, and they jammed. They might have actually, believe it or not, worked on some riffs that ended up in Rocket Queen that just fell apart, at the time. And so they didn't leave Duff didn't leave because they didn't get along. He left because he didn't think, it was ready to go yet. It wasn't a band that had a singer and ready to just, Duff was ready. He already toured with, punk bands, and he didn't want to start in the middle of a band. Although he knew Slash was a great guitar player, it just only lasted about a week, and they Duff moved on. But long story short, that when Slash and Steven were asked to join Guns N' Roses, when Tracy and Rob left, this was the end of May of 85. When I got there to see what was going on, Duff was there, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, I know that guy." And I already knew Izzy from a year before, and of course I was friends with Axl, and so it's like, okay, we know everyone in this band. This is kind of cool. And then what changed it all, and I swear to God, what had to make it work, was Izzy and Duff stole one of Steven's bass drums while he went to smoke a cigarette or went to the bathroom out of the rehearsal, and hit it. And that solidified it, because before that, Axl I knew was great, but he was getting, first of all, Steven on double bass drums was the same as Cozy Powell. It was, you think you're listening to Rainbow Rising. It was just insane. And it was loud. And so it was the kind of songs they were writing were for that. And Axl screaming, and it's good, but you really can't hear it. and sometimes the song would slow down through a chorus or something, and it's like, oh, there's Axl. But this time you hear Axl great, and Steve, because they stole one of those bass drums away, he totally turned into like this funky drummer. That wasn't Steven before. Steven was just, those feet were moving. So everything slowed down. They had "Don't Cry," which Slash was not involved in, but of course that's Slash's guitar solo. But that was like, original. They had "Think About You," which I didn't hear before. I already knew about "Anything Goes." That's what sucked me in the first place and Slash to even be interested in Slash trying to get together with Axl. And Slash actually met Izzy while he was working at right here where Genghis Cohen is now. It's on Melrose in Fairfax. There was a music store called Hollywood Music Store. And Izzy came in there because there was this drawing that Slash had made for me for my birthday of Aerosmith. And it was a really cool cartoon. It's actually in the last page of Reckless Road. Mm-hmm. It actually started out as just a Stephen and Joe drawing. And a year later, he took it back and added the rest of the band, which is kind of tricky to do if that wasn't his intention, which it wasn't. But anyways, I keep changing stories, but
it's all good
because there's just so much information. But it's kind of important because Izzy walked in there looking for, he heard the guy that made that drawing works there, and he was looking for a copy of it. So that was Slash's first brush with Izzy. And even though they didn't hang out or jam together or anything, they could see each other were cool, and there was some kind of image going around just looking at each other. And I don't know 100%, but it's very possible that Izzy might have said, "Come check out my band, I'm in Rose," or something like that. Could have been, maybe even handed him a demo tape, but I don't know. I think that's how because somehow we did get a hold of that demo tape, and I remember listening to it, and I don't know how we got a hold of it, but I'm speculating that it was at that meeting. It's like, here's my tape, check out my band, or whatever. But now I am going to jump stories for a second, because now that we brought up that music store, that's where we're going to tie in a Kiss story. Okay. So the owner of that music store, his name was Hiro. He was a Japanese guy, and obviously when there's no one in the store and you're working a music store, you're going to plug a guitar into an amp and start doodling around. Well, so it didn't take Hiro long to see that Slash knew what he was doing. And even though nobody knew that Ace Frehley had quit Kiss, he was aware of it because he was in the industry, and he knew that Kiss was actively looking for a guitar player. So he recommended Slash for the job. But also there was some red flags there, because Slash was only 17 at the time. It was in 1982. And Slash was actually also working a business card clock for $6 an hour. And we knew that Paul Stanley was going to call like at 2 p.m. or something like that. So I was there with him when that call came in. And I couldn't hear what Paul Stanley was saying, but I heard basically the answers that Slash was giving. And I was like, yeah, I could pull that off. Yeah, I could do that. I think so. Yep, I could. Yeah, I could. So afterwards, I asked him, what did he ask you? Oh, would you be able to tour? Could you record? Is your parents cool with it? That kind of stuff. And I think he got spooked because, he didn't want to take on the liability of a 17-year-old. But so we never heard back from him. But had he would have scheduled, let's just say Slash was 18 at the time, I'm 100% sure he would have scheduled Slash to, learn 3 songs and come play with the band or whatever and see how it goes. If Slash walks in the way he looks, and Slash had a good image of him back in 82, and just heard plug in an amp and let Slash rip away and doodle around, I'm very confident that Slash would have probably been picked for the job. And so that's kind of a story that gets left behind. And here's the joke.
No Guns N' Roses, right? Guns N' Roses would have happened.
In my opinion, Guns N' Roses would have happened, even though when Tracy and Rob left, they probably would have found another guitar player and maybe even got Steven. Who knows? But there's a lot, between Izzy and Axl and Duff, there's a lot of good songwriting talent, capability there. But you don't have Paradise City, you don't have Rocket Queen, you don't have Jungle, you don't have Sweet Child. You're right. Missing a lot. You're missing a lot. And also, Izzy would start a lot of songs, and Slash would funk them up a little bit and add to them, and was influenced by them, and so he would we'll call it decorated. So
sure.
Yes. Not,
Freezing again. It's okay.
doesn't
It's like live rock and roll.
not fall on
We're
their
getting
own.
we're getting every other word. That's okay.
Paul Stanley definitely know this, and like I told you about, and you had a phone interview. Then he might remember, but he doesn't realize that it was Slash. Nobody has ever went back and said, "Hey, you know that kid you were talking to?" Because at that time it was Saul Hudson. It wasn't Slash. Slash changed his name until '84. So
Okay.
I don't know if he's ever. How could James? How could Paul Stanley possibly remember that story? But if somebody kind of walked him through it, he might say, "Oh yeah, I do remember that phone call.
There's
Wow,
got
that was
somebody.
Slash." That was Slash. Wow. Because if I'd known that was Slash, I think we could have worked this out by getting his parents to sign off on this and, get the lawyers to drop the papers. Because obviously, there is rock stars that are kids look at Michael Jackson, look at all those other kids that are able to, function in a touring world and not worry about, the liability. But so anyways, I thought that was just that story never got added because there was nowhere to put it. So
Right.
that there's a lot of things like that that are important that I think are could have changed. That's like a sliding door, in rock and roll history.
How do you retain all this information? Because I am lucky I know what I had yesterday. I know what this morning for breakfast. I'm lucky I do. But obviously you have so much of it documented now in the book, and you have the photographs that you had the wherewithal to take early on. But do you just have that kind of steel trap memory to like
I do have that memory for certain things, but not for what I need them for. Like in school, I was never good. No matter how I studied, I'd be very lucky to come home with that C or that C minus. So it was, I'm a little, but I'm also a little OCD. So the OCD is what drives you to do certain things thoroughly, leave no stone unturned. Like I bet you a good hitman is probably OCD because they'll study week and see where you eat, see where you go to the gym. They'll find the best time to get you. But you map things out. So what when I first met Slash, I knew he was a little different than most people. He wore moccasins. He dressed differently. He had a real talent for art in school. I noticed with his like art projects. When it was, I'd write something with a bunch of stick figures, and he would draw this really cool animated jungle of dinosaurs and snakes crawling through trees, and the dinosaur would have a dimple. And this is not traced out of a book. This is just him freehanding it. And he'd sketch it out like a street artist. He'd just boom, 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 and there it was. So you knew he had some talent, but this was in 1976. So we weren't, even though he came from a music background, his parents, we weren't listening to music. We were just, hoodlums riding around on our bike doing things and, stealing shit and whatever, knocking trash cans over. We lost touch for a year because he got kicked out of the John Burroughs Junior High School and was put in Bancroft, which even though it might only be a mile away, it's just, you lose touch with people. So
you're a kid, a mile away is 10,000 miles away. I got
a
it.
mile away, if we were in the cell phone days, or that, we would have never lost touch, but we lost touch. And a year later, we bumped into each other again. And I was wearing an Aerosmith shirt. He was wearing a Zeppelin shirt. So here we are. We both got into music on our own. And I said, "Oh, hey, what's up?" And he says, "Oh, I play guitar. I'm in this band, Titus Sloan." Instinctively, I knew. Oh, I missed. We were riding bikes, and when we were riding bikes, he was doing things that you'd see in X Games today, but they weren't really doing in 1978. He was a little quicker, a little stronger, and he more outrageous. And so when he'd go off a jump at a race, flashes would go off. When other people would go off a jump, nothing would happen. So everyone knew he was the he was he was bringing the attention. But okay, so let's get back to this. When he told me he was, playing guitar and in a band, I instinctively knew that it was just not, it was going to be something special. I went with him that day. My mom literally came to pick me up, and I sent her away, and I went with him. And he was actually living not that far. He was living on Wilshire and Crescent Heights at the time. And just coincidentally, the drummer that was in his band, Adam Greenberg, I knew from John Burroughs Junior High School, who, he hooked up with him a few years later. But so I already knew him, and the bass player Ronnie Schneider I didn't know, but I sat there and he plugged into his BC Rich Mockingbird into his Sun amp, and they were playing like Heaven and Hell and some cover songs, Zeppelin, Aerosmith. They had a couple originals, but it was just insane that the sound that he was getting, because I was playing guitar too, and when I said, here, let me play that guitar. That sounds really good. In between this, whatever, after rehearsal, I plug in, I play. It doesn't sound that good to me, but when he was playing, he was getting that guitar with controlled feedback. It's the way you play it. And it's, years later, I saw that again in him when he played at the Kibitz Room night. He dropped in here they used to have Tuesday night jams. He didn't bring any equipment. And there was some crappy green Strat on the stage that was probably a $200 Strat that was bought a year before that. And that it plugged into who knows what amp. And he picked it up, fuddled a little bit with the tones, and they were jamming. And, all of a sudden you hear Slash. Now, Slash is not known for playing out of a Strat. What does he play? Dust and Bones with a Strat, which is cool. But, you think of Slash, you think of a Les Paul. And that sound he gets, but he was getting that sound out of the Strat. So it's the guitar. Sure, the Les Paul helps, and the amp certainly helps, but he was getting it without it. He was doing it. So back to that rehearsal, they would play a blues song or something else, and I was getting goosebumps, and so right away I was sucked in, and I used to document him racing bikes, taking pictures and that stuff. So I started taping those rehearsals and taping those anytime they played a party. And I wasn't taking pictures yet, because that ties back into Jack Lew. How we were talking about Jack Lew earlier, and he's the one that influenced me to take photos. Jack Lew was a friend of mine since 1979, and we'd go to concerts, and he would always take the best photos. And one concert was it was Alan Holdsworth playing the Roxy, April of '82. And Jack couldn't, and we knew that Eddie Van Halen was going to be there. We got word through the grapevine, and might play a song with him for the encore. So Jack wanted to shoot it, but couldn't, because he had his day job had a night job for him that day. So, or he had to leave town. I forgot what it was, but he handed me his camera, put a load of a roll of film, set it to the settings that he thought would work for that show, and just told me, shoot a roll off, see what happens. And I shot a roll off, and I got one money shot. The rest were okay, but they were a little fuzzy or whatever. And right away, that one shot was enough of Eddie Van Halen to influence me to steal my sister's Canon 81 that was just sitting in her closet, that my mom probably bought her for a photography class she took in high school. And so I already knew. I knew what speed film, 400 speed film, do this, open the lens. So I wasn't a photographer, but I learned what Jack showed me for that gig, and I used that. And it was hit and miss. The first time I shot Slash was Slash playing guitar anyways, was at Fairfax High School. And that was June. You're going to say I have a photographic memory, but I know this because I have prints from those shows. And I know the date, because I like to put where it was at and the date. So I've done that so many times that they're in my hard drive now. So that was June 4th, 1982.
My grandpa used to do that. In the back of every photo, he would write the date. I mean, it's such a lost art, but yeah.
Well, I write it on front, actually. When people do the fine art photos, they number them 1 to 100 or whatever, and then they sign it. They number it on the left, they sign them on the right. I number it, and then I give you as much possible information. This is the first time I played Welcome to the Jungle, or this is the debut of Paradise City. If there's something that happened to that gig, I like to write that, because it makes it a little bit more special. But anyways, so that's why all these dates are in my head. I shot that show. It was a day show. It was daytime at lunch break at school, Fairfax High School, and you don't need the camera. Every picture came out, because you're not fighting lighting. You're not fighting if the red lights are on, it's not going to work. You got to wait for the yellow lights. There was just daylight. So I blew off that roll of film in one song, and every one of those pictures came out, and that was it. I never looked back. I shot everything. After that, I brought my camera to all the shows with Jack, and we shot together. But of course, I shot Slash was doing. So I shot some rehearsals. I shot all those gigs. So I kind of followed Slash. Knew the importance of it. I knew 100% sure he was going to make his living playing guitar. I knew, and it was exciting to me, and that's why I taped it. But I also knew I was documenting, and it wasn't just Slash. It was Slash until I met the rest of them, and then I saw each brought something to the table. It wasn't Slash was the monster, and the rest of them are just here for the ride. It was equal amount of energy coming. When the first time I shot that Appetite for Destruction lineup on June 6th at the Troubadour, if you're a photographer and you're looking at things, sometimes you don't pull the trigger if you don't like what you see. I pointed the camera at Izzy, I'm shooting. I pointed to Steven, I'm shooting. I pointed at Duff, I'm shooting. I obviously shot. Slash always looks good. Axel's flying around stage, I'm shooting him. I shot 4 rolls of film and they only had like a 30-minute, 35-minute set. And I didn't even have a rewinder yet. I had to, every time I shot it, I had to flick it with my finger to, reset. Everything looked good, so you had all. And then when I saw how they were writing songs, the first song they wrote together was Welcome to the Jungle. And that was just the way you hear it on the record is right down to guitar solo is the way I heard it the first time they played it. Same guitar solo, same everything. So it was arranged, produced, it was like, wow, that's like a Led Zeppelin. That's, these guys, they can't do wrong. That was just one song. And then, they already had Don't Cry and a few others. So you knew that it was working. And then 2 months later, Rocket Queen was debuted at the Troubadour. It was, when was that? That was September 20th. And that song, just like you hear it on the record, was the same way it was played that night, right down to every guitar solo that's in it. So Slash would hear that melody, it would influence, Axel's voice would influence it, and it would come out, and he ripped it out of just winging it, and it worked. And so he remembered it, and it just stuck. The next time they played it, time to record, he's going to play it because it's part of the song. So, then came Paradise City a couple months later. Then all of a sudden, not My Michelle. Night Train came in December. 2 weeks later, they had My Michelle. There was no throwaways. Every song they did, it's like you hear it on the record, and it didn't need any arranging. It was so at that point I knew that this is absolutely going to work, not just Slash, but all of them as a team effort. And as long as they don't die, or some of them die, or one of them dies, or get thrown in jail, or whatever, or they could break up too, because even though they're creating good music, there was there's issues sometimes, and there was a lot of stress that 4 of them were living in that studio that's not a live-in studio really, and Duff was living with his girlfriend, but sometimes they didn't all live there if they hooked up with somebody or they had a girlfriend for a short time, but still they're getting chased by the police that some girl turned them in for this or that, and so it gives them material. Then they write Out to Get Me, so they're writing about what's going on. I mean, Izzy hooked up with Rod Stewart's girlfriend. And I wasn't even hanging out with Izzy at the time, although I sort of was, because he was here at Cantor's writing with Tracy. But she dropped him off at where they were hanging out at that studio. And he sat down, after they hooked up, he sat down on the cement curb there and wrote the lyrics to Think About You. So they're writing about what's going on, at that time. And so the dynamic of that, and there was so much craziness going on. Not only do you have all that talent,
I think the Facebook and Instagram bots are getting to you again.
Material to write about this just of their life. It's not like they're made up. This is like Mr. Brown.
You're slowing down a little bit, Mark. I don't want to, because you're off on a great roll. You're slowing down a little bit. There we go. You're back. Well, if I can ask, because I don't want to keep you here forever, and maybe you'll buffer back to a normal speed. It was one. You're getting there. You're still in witness protection voice a little bit. Okay, now you're good. Now I can see your hands.
All right, so
all good. Well,
by the way,
go ahead, buddy.
All right, so the material was real. You know, it's not like they have to make shit up and or they saw a TV show or a movie and they influenced to write this or write that. They're writing their own. They were writing their own. You know, their life. It was this, you know, a biography of what was going on. So it worked. You know, they had the right sound. Axl's got 5 octaves or whatever you want to call it, registers of voice registers, and you know they look good, they sound good, the guitar's good. They had everything going for them. So the thing was, my job was to document it, but also at the same time make it a little easier for them to get to the next gig. Help them put an ad in band magazine to get a bigger crowd there. Help them buy some flyers. Help pay for maybe a demo tape, a packet guitar string. I actually bought Slash's wah-wah pedal. He had a wah-wah pedal in the early '80s, but it broke or disappeared. But I before it was his birthday, right before he wrote Brownstone. So his birthday was in July, and Brownstone showed up a month later. So and also Child showed up then too. So I don't know if I want to take credit for that, but I did buy it. I did buy it.
But I think that's important. It's something you said early on. Are these ancillary characters? Like, yeah, you maybe want to hear from the rock star, the people that wrote the song. No, it's the people that you've interviewed for Reckless Road and for 51st Gigs, the people that like yourself that were there, and you're not asking them to recall 30 years of their life. It's 1 year. So I'm curious, because I believe you interviewed Steve Darrow on one of your episodes, right?
Yes.
I'm wondering if you can add to, because he wasn't sure, he doesn't want to take credit to it, for it, that he named Axl when they were trying to come up with another name. Do you know anything about that story when they were trying to come up with possibly naming the band after Hollywood Rose Axl? And he's like, why don't you just call yourself Axl? Do you know anything more about that?
From what I remember, and what I don't know, but I researched that the word AXL was Axl's band. When Chris Webber joined up with Izzy and Axl, the band was called AXL. But here's the weird thing: Axl was still going by Bill Bailey then. So I don't know if he was actually going by the name Axl. So it might have been something he was thinking of changing his name to, and that's why they named the band AXL. But so, anyways, it ended up being Rose and then turned into Hollywood Rose. And Steve Darrow was not in Rose or Hollywood Rose. Steve Darrow became in the new Hollywood Rose and entered Hollywood. See, when I saw Hollywood Rose at Gazzari's, they played a 3-song set for a battle of the bands. Slash and Steven were with me. And Steve Darrow was not the bass player. It was this guy that I went to Beverly Hills High School with. What's his name? Something Trucks. I forgot his Andre Trucks. So, but that band fell apart right then after that night. And when Slash and Steven joined the band, Chris Webber was out. Steve Darrow came in. So the first time Steve Darrow played with Hollywood Rose, the name was already Hollywood Rose. And although Axl was still going sometimes by Bill, but when I met Axl, I met him as Axl, and I met him in May of '84, the same time that Steve Darrow met him. So I don't know if Steve, I don't know. Oh, I hope that didn't just kill me.
No,
okay, I got a call. Wait, I got rid. I don't know if when Hollywood Rose, when Steve Darrow was joining Hollywood Rose, at that time Axl might have been saying, maybe we should change the name to AXL because I think I want to go with Axl. That's what I'm going to call myself. That could have happened because, like I said, some people called him, because I remember when we went to see.
You remember when we won't keep you for that longer.
Slash, I would love to get or join.
Can you repeat that again, Mark? Because you're skipping.
The what?
Can you just repeat that? That part again, because you're skipping. We won't keep you. It's the same bots that have attacked on Facebook and Instagram today. They're attacking you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay. So the first time I knew of Hollywood Rose, we had that demo tape and we listened to it, and Slash said, I would love to get Bill and Izzy in my band or join their band. And so we went to see them. When I went to see them, I thought that was Bill. After the show or the next day, I met him and he introduced himself as Axel. So I never once in my life called him Bill, but I knew of him as Bill, but when I met him, he was instantly Axel. So I always called him Axel. So he changed his name right about then. So it's possible Steve Darrell might have helped him. Hey, dude, that's cool. You should go with Axel. He might have changed. Axel might have been on the fence about it. And then Steve Darrell could have easily talked him into changing his name to Axel. It sounds right.
This is what's good about doing sleuthing, internet sleuthing, or documentaries. You get to really break it down and discover, and you get the fact and the timeline, and everything is great. So has there been a favorite episode of yours that you've done so far of the 51st gigs? Are there going to be 50 episodes? I guess, how are you going about releasing it?
Well, okay, so that's a good question. I think there's, I could be off by one or two, but I think there's 12 or 14 episodes for the first season. Yeah. And there's also bonus episodes. And bonus episodes are episodes that Jason doesn't think are strong enough to make it into an episode, but they're important enough to keep it in there. So they become thrown in bonus episodes. There might be 4 or 5 bonus episodes in first season. First season takes you from from basically how it all began, any of them playing in Los Angeles, to the day they end up back at Canter's Deli after they came back from Hell Tour. So the Appetite for Destruction lineup plays one gig at the Troubadour, goes up north, their car breaks down, so that becomes Hell Tour. And then they play one gig in Seattle, so now they got 2 gigs in their pocket, and they come back to Canter's to take a publicity shot at this famous booth now, because you can see what makes that shot so good is if you look at them, they all know in their eye that they got it, and this is it. This is the lineup it's gonna work, because they suffered together. They already knew they were good musicians together, but they're now blood brothers because they lived through this hell of getting to Seattle and what it took to get there. So the look on their face is like, yeah, we got it. We're here. We're going to take this picture to get, on a flyer for our next gig, which was at the Stardust Ballroom at the end of that month. And, that was basically it. So that's the first season. Now, the second season, all that's going to happen in the second season or the third or the fourth and even the fifth is we're going to continue to the next event, which is the next gig, which that gig at the Stardust Ballroom. And so we're going to talk about that gig. We're going to talk about what was going on around that gig. Vicki Hamilton booked them for that gig, even though she wasn't managing them. So they had to deal with Vicki as a booker. So, you're going to get tidbits of all these people that were involved in that. And we might even interview some of the members from the bands that they played with. They played with the Unforgiven that night, and they were the headliners. So maybe do they remember their opener? And do they realize that band became, famous, or, that kind of stuff. So it's sometimes interesting because there could be stories that are left on that never got told, that these people that played gigs with them might remember. So it's just cool. I know it sounds like you're fishing for something, but you'd be surprised what you can come up with. And if nothing else, you're going to get extra photos that didn't make it into Reckless Road. And you're going to get a little video footage, intertwined in there. And you're just going to get people commenting. What did they do that night? They debuted Mama Kin. So even though it's not their song, it is the first time they debuted it. So, and then just what was going on at that time in their lives. And you're going to get that. Then you're going to go to the next gig. And, the next gig was at Madam Wong's East. And they played in front of 4 people on a July 4th. Nobody was there. It was just their girlfriend. So, you're going to get that. So you were just going to move, and then they recorded their demo tape. You're going to get how that was made. So the episodes will be to determine, but all we're doing is following the history line and what may show up. And And when we hit season 2, it's because it might be 12 or 14 episodes, and then that's it. That's season 2. Where it ends, I don't know. And then we'll hit season 3. But we speculate that it'll be about 5 seasons if we get all the way through from the start, the genesis of this to when it didn't matter anymore because they took off with the cult and they went on tour and in the last episode you're going to find out that okay, so they toured they got put on the tour at the Cult. Nobody really knew who they were. They came to see the Cult and there was this band Guns N' Roses. Who are they? Well, after in each city that they played in, you're going to hear Tom Zutaut talk about records were sold the next day in those those local record stores. So there was this little underground buzz going on, and every time they'd play a city, records would be sold in that city. And eventually, without any airplay or other than like KNEC, and no MTV, support, they sold 200,000 copies. And then when MTV started playing them, and that was a whole nother story. That could be a whole episode in itself.
Sure.
And we had, Geffen Records had to bend their arm backwards to play the song, and they agreed, okay, we're going to play it one time on a Sunday night at 2 in the morning LA time, 5 in the morning New York time, because we don't want to get hell from sponsors that we played these guys that have this rape band cover and have there's bad reputations. So they just didn't want to deal with that. But they did it as a favor. And of course, the switchboards blew up. Hey, who's that? Play that song again. And then they were thrown into top 10 rotation like within 2 or 3 days from that. And the rest is history. They were selling 200,000 records a week at some point after that because of MTV. So
that's why it's great to get your story, because it wasn't an overnight thing when they exploded, and how long it took for it to happen, and that you were just you have all the little details. It's not just like, hey, I was here for the first incarnation of it. The fact that again you were there for moments that Slash doesn't remember, or Axl may not remember, that you were there in the front lines to get these stories from the people that you may not hear from all the time, like Steve Weber, like a Vicky Hamilton. So that's great. And fans do love it. They really do, especially, I have to say it's from a band that doesn't give us a lot. We don't know a lot from their history. So we're forced to watch, reels documentaries, things that are sensationalistic. So when we do get things from you that are, people that were there, it's gold to us. We know it's real. We know it's valid, and it's more than we ever got before.
I've been involved in some of those sensationalized things where, they come to make a little 6-minute documentary on how I documented Guns N' Roses, and they film it so well, and they do such a good job on it. And then somebody, in the main office gets a hold of it and says, "Hey, let's go to town with this, and we're going to say we found the guy that could get Guns N' Roses back together," and they label it. I don't know if you remember, this was like 6-7 years ago. And the funny thing is,
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Took one blurb that was 100% authentic, but they nicked the whole video after that. And we went back to the studio where they first rehearsed it, and it was like 2:00 in the morning. My voice was shot because they'd interviewed me since 8 in the morning, and we went to different places. They were so thorough. We went to the Troubadour, we went to Tower Video, and I said the same things while I was driving. They videotaped me in the mirror, like literally. So they did all these cool effects, and they asked me the same questions 8 million times, but just to get different backgrounds with it. So anyways, my voice was shot. I was pissed off. It was like 2 in the morning. And he says, "What would it take to get these guys back together?" And I was like, "What would it take? Get rid of the bullshit, put them there, no management, put those 5 guys in that room, and that's what it would take." I was like, that was like pure emotion. And then what do? They take it and they name it as if I'm the guy that could get them back together. It had nothing to do with getting them back together. It was just, they asked me that question, and it was a fair question. And I gave them the right answer. And it's true what I gave them at that time anyways. And soon after, the joke of it was Slash had already reunited with Axl. I wasn't even aware of it. And that's the joke of it. That's what made it funny. They were already back together before we were filming that even. And I didn't even know it. And I mean, soon the world found out about it, a couple months after that. But that's what made it so funny, because everyone said, "Hey, you did a good job. You got them back together." No, I didn't get them back together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was wondering. I was just actually perusing that documentary before and going to ask you how you feel about it now. Guns N' Roses they finished their last tour date after 6 successful years of touring, and you weren't like Andrew Dice Clay or Fred Durst that claimed to take into credit for getting them back together, but still, just to get your opinion on, again, somebody who was there from the infancy to now, to see where they're all alive. We were laughing about it before. If they all live, they'll make it. Well,
No,
they're all alive.
the joke of it is that was not to get them back together. That documentary was just a little documentary on how I decided to do what I did.
Mhm.
But the joke of it was, for 12 years, I did try to get them back together publicly in an intervention on chat boards, and on any interview I did, I was talking to Axel. They would ask me a question and I'd answer it as if I was looking in Axel's eyes. And most of it was like, yes, they just need some, like a family therapist to hear their things, because I know their gripes, each one of their gripes. And I knew that there was no one shot each other's mother. It was, these were these are things that could easily be fixed by the right, just getting together. And I was just in it just every single day on it, getting this information out, hoping that Axel would look at it. And it turns out they weren't letting him look at it, and so I was kind of wasting my time. But it doesn't matter. I die with my boots on. I did it for the right reasons,
You did.
and at least I was also helping a lot of fans that were fighting, blaming things. It was Slash's fault. It's Axel's fault. I said it's nobody's fault. There's no bad guy here. They just disagreed on some things. But
I thank
I
you for that. The fans thank you for that, because we weren't getting much, even as somebody. Yeah, I was happy with Axel's version. I didn't get to see Slash and Axel on stage together, unlike you. But I didn't see it for the first time until the reunion. So I thought it was never going to happen. So for someone like you or Doug Goldstein that takes time to talk to talk to fans, I think it's important. We understand that you're not with the band now, and there's some sort of stiff arm with some with people in the past with the current incarnation of it. But I think what you do to take time to talk to the fans, to a band, the people about the band that you love, their friends that you love, we don't take that for granted. That's why people are excited to hear from you again today.
You know what? Deep inside, Axel feels that way too. If you listen to "Get in the Ring," there's some lyrics about he's talking about Bob Guccione Jr. or whatever,
Yeah.
ripping off the kids to learn about that paid their hard-earned money to learn about the bands they want to know about. Just take that line about, and so there was actually a time when Doug Goldstein called me. I don't know, maybe 88, 89, somewhere like that, from while they were on the road. And he said, Axel wants to hire you to look through. Yeah, it was right around the time of that. To look through all the magazines and see what's and let management know, or let somebody know what's bullshit. About sometimes you do an interview and they twist the words and they sensationalize it, and they if you do a video interview, it is what it is. But if you do an audio interview and they print it, there's always somebody gets in there and screws it up. But so Axel was like, didn't like that shit. When you say something and then you read it 2 weeks later and it's not exactly what you said. And they not only that, they've twisted it to make it look
Yeah.
like you said something else.
At a contact, sure.
So anyway, they did that with me. They twisted my words to make it look like I'm there trying to get the band back together, which I was, but that wasn't why we made that video. But anyways, long story short, Doug says, I don't know how you're going to know what's right or wrong because you weren't there when the interviews were being done. But he said, Axel said you would know because Axel was betting on that I would know whether they said that or they didn't say that, even though I wasn't there. Because Axel knew that I knew them better than they knew themselves, you know. So, anyways, I said to Doug, look, no one's going to hire me to do that. I'll look at. I'm collecting all those magazines anyways. I'll look through them. If I see something that I don't like, I'll let you know. But you don't have to pay me for it. It's not, I'll help you out. But, anyways, it went away. I didn't really have to do that. At some point, Axel changed his mind or whatever. But what I'm getting at is the Axel knew when I was doing this he knew exactly what, Slash was used to me with the camera always, so he didn't pay much attention. But Axel understood that I was documenting for the right reasons. And they had a gig at the Central once. You might even see some of the video on YouTube. And the sound man told me I couldn't videotape. And I went up to Axel. I said, "Hey, the sound man's not letting me videotape." And he said, "Oh yeah, then we won't play." So he knew what I was doing. He knew that important to document this. And there was a couple of disagreements that they had. Bands fight, of course, and I didn't get that on video because I just wasn't. I was only really documenting the gigs. I wasn't looking for backstage, what was going on backstage. I might have a little footage from backstage fooling around, but for the most part, I videotape any of their fights, and Axel once said he almost wished I had, just so they had it documented that they had a fight and worked it out, whatever. But so, it's just that the people running things now, they just have everything on lockdown. They don't do interviews, and they have their own agenda behind that, and that's their business. They can do what they want. You can't change history. I'm not documenting what they're doing now. I'm happy what they're doing now. And it's being documented by, thousands of people with their iPhones in the crowd, basically videotaping or doing whatever they're doing. But there's no secrets what's going on now. They're on tour and they're playing. That's it. But nobody knows what was going on or how this. A lot of people want to know that the history is very important. How did my favorite band that gets me through my day sometimes, or when I'm having a bad day, how did they write this song? Why did they, what influenced them to do? Oh, is that girl that did the, what? So it's important to get that stuff up. Now, I'm not obsessed with getting this stuff out. I was obsessed in capturing it to make sure I caught it. It was not my job to get it out. It was my job to capture it. I'm not going to let it go to waste. But, if nothing else, I like it. So it's for me. Let's say the whole world didn't like Guns N' Roses. That's great. I got it. But it turned out the world did like Guns N' Roses. Just like I said, because I compared them to Led Zeppelin, which, by the way, is not my favorite band. But I understand that Led Zeppelin is probably the best band. So, and I know what the reasons why, that what music they created, and there was no throwaway music. And so, anyways, as far as I was concerned, documenting Led Zeppelin, just in Guns N' Roses. So, anyways, I have it, and yes, my goal was to get it out with Reckless Road. We didn't have the right, we went independent publisher instead of a real publisher, and we failed in getting the message out because, we sold maybe 50,000 copies after 12 years, and we should have sold, 1 million copies or more, because any fan that's going to pay $375 to go see them now would pay, $25 for a book, a treasure trove of the first 50 gigs. Mm-hmm. So it just the word didn't get spread out right. So, but we do have the information, and, COVID hit, and which made this project happen. So that's why we're doing this. So if you go to 51st, the first 50gigs.com, you could get information, sign up, and it's a podcast.
And you guys have as you're slowing down again, I'll fill in the gap. You guys have an Instagram, which is back up now. You have a Facebook and a Twitter.
Here,
oh,
like 15. I think there's a $25 things, and then those get displayed, and you get a few, like maybe some shirt memorabilia, not original memorabilia, but maybe reproduced. I don't know. Jason's taking care of that stuff, and he's in charge of sending, or a free book. You might get a signed book. But the $15 is a great one, because that gets you basically the podcast with all the video footage, the extras. And so, it's a cool little, we need that fee, not because we want to, get rich on that fee. We need that fee because these things have like 20 people working behind them, putting them together, editing them. And these people aren't necessarily, it's not in their blood. To me, I'll do anything for free to get it out there. These people are professionals, and they need to get paid for their time to get this information out there. So no one's making money off this, but it's kind of like a GoFundMe thing. It keeps a little money in flowing, which keeps us able to hire the people that are producing it and editing it and doing all that stuff. So
I hear.
it's basically it's a GoFundMe basically.
Is
So
there any, and if you're watching on Zoom, I just realized today that Cantor's was featured in Mad Men. I watched that for the first time during the pandemic, so I have a Mad Men Cantor's Deli background right now. I don't know. I don't know if
yep.
you. Could,
You know, they loved filming here because their art department looked around and they said, okay, we're ready to go. They didn't have they changed like 2 pictures on the wall. They didn't have to change the furniture. We even had menus back from the 50s or 60s when that time was there. So they didn't even have to reproduce the menu. We literally threw down the menu that was used at that time. So
oh, that's
anytime there's a timepiece filmed here, they love it because it fits. We
Then
don't
let,
have to do.
then let me ask them before we got it here. Let's see. This is another one I got. Yeah, this is from Entourage, right?
Yeah, that's Entourage. Yeah.
Yeah, Cantor's. Okay. So I mean, it's the more I always want to show it's more than just Guns N' Roses. You have so much there. And once I swear I will make it there one day. I have a turkey sandwich with my name on it. But I think it's such a great thing what you're doing now. And you could tell your heart is in the right place with all of it. And I love, fans love talking with you. I think this is a great new thing. It is Reckless Road come to life. And it's great that it's not just a podcast. It's like what I'm doing now. You could listen to it or you can watch it. And I
Right.
guess the only question is, and I guess it might be a difficult one, any chance the music sees a light of day? Because I know that's a whole other issue. It's one thing if the photographs that you have ownership of, but
Well,
we hear the songs from these first 50 gigs ever.
that's gray area because a lot of that was recorded before they were signed, and I did have permission to document it. And you can't. There's certain loopholes in certain things. So if we wanted to force it, of course we could, but we're not for trouble to fight with copyrights and with people
Okay.
like. So, but we did ask the band officially if they want to get involved in the podcast or allow us to.
Sorry, it's cutting and slowing down again. So you asked the band officially if they wanted to be a part of it. This would be a fun episode to listen back to. Hold on. Mark is frozen in one look.
Loophole spots, but
Okay, it's okay. I'm gonna pretend like this is live radio. This is gonna be fun. I can stop. I wish I had intermission.
I mean, but we do have video footage.
Maybe, I don't. You sound like you're like a Taco Bell drive-through right now. I don't know, bud. We can pause it for a moment and see what happens. See if you come back. I hear you. Oh, there we go. Now you're back. So back to the music. It's too difficult. maybe this is a way of the universe saying that we have to cut the interview. You have to get back to work. It's too difficult.
I want to say one more thing about the history of Cantors. Just throw this in there. Okay. So the history of Cantors goes 50 Marilyn Monroe and all that, but even Elvis was here. But forget about that. The only story I'm going to tell is a Neil Young story. So in 1966, or a little before then, Neil Young had met Stephen Stills, but Stephen Stills wasn't famous yet, in Canada somewhere, and they bumped into each other somewhere, and they hit it off a little, knew that they could work together one day. But Stephen Stills went back to LA. So if you ever come to LA, look me up, try to find me, we'll put something together. So Neil Young decides to move here in 1966. He's driving a hearse to carry his equipment in, instead of a van. And he gets to LA and realizes that LA is, 700 times bigger than he thought. And he's not able to find Stephen Stills. And he's looking for him. But while he's looking for him, he decides he's going to work by taxing patrons of Cantor's Deli to the Sunset Strip back and forth for $1 a ride. So our unofficial Uber driver. And that for a while. And the funny thing is, this ties into someone I know told me, why was there always a hurt? When I was a kid, this guy's older than me. He said, when I was a teenager, I'd go to Cantor's, and every time we'd go there, there'd be a hearse outside. And we'd have this joke that what if people are dropping dead and they have to drive them, with the hearse. But it took 30 years later or more to figure out it was Neil Young, because Neil Young told this story once. Rolling Stone, and it all pieced together to me. But then he eventually met Stephen Stills by accident on the street, and he was on his way. Actually, he had saved enough money from working as our Uber driver. He was going to San Francisco to try to start something because he gave up on Stephen Stills, and then he met Stephen Stills, and they put together Buffalo Springfield. So I'm just going to tell that story real quick, and I got it out. So there you go.
I appreciate that story.
But the birds, everybody ate here. The mamas and papas, the Doors. I met, different members of the Doors over the years, and they come in and they eat, and they tell me stories about with Jim Morrison and all. The Canters was always a fun place because the other places would sometimes, think they're hippies and they're gonna, walk out without pain or cause trouble or smoke pot in the bathroom and the Canters always treated them fairly. So. Canter's was known, and also we were with two places open, Ben Frank's and Canter's. So you only had two choices, and those days the lines were out the doors in both of those places anyway, so it didn't matter. You had to pick one.
I really felt like I missed out on something having only Ben's Deli on Long Island. I wish I had a Canter's Deli. Ben's was okay.
Also, real quick, you said that turkey sandwich. Write this down. You want the Matt Special, okay? The Matt Special.
The Matt Special.
That's the turkey sandwich that's grilled. It's grilled on egg bread with coleslaw and Russian dressing and Munster cheese, and it's just a really good sandwich if you're a turkey lover.
All right, hold on that for me until I get there. I don't know. One of these days, Mark, I will get it out. I will get out there. I mean, we've been traveling a lot, my fiance and I. So, and I've been having her do the Guns N' Roses road trip. She's more of a Dave Matthews fan, but I've got her to see Guns N' Roses times in the last year.
Listen, I talk to fans from all over the world that come here, and if I can, I give them 5 minutes to tell them a few stories. But one time I absolutely had nothing to do, and these 4 people were so dedicated, and they mapped them out. Their health is where this, and I started to map it down on. There's a map in Reckless Road that gives you that, but it's kind of animated. So I kind of was giving them directions, and I said, you know what? I said, let's go. I threw them in my car, and I gave them the Reckless Road tour of the city of the Guns N' Roses spots. And I've only done that once. And these people, and you're not even going to believe this if I tell you this, but I have a Guns N' Roses pinball machine that they gave me in 1994. I even took them to the house and let them play the machine. That's how I was, but I had nothing going on. And I thought, let's have some fun with this and make their day, you do a good deed for somebody. You're rewarded by someone else happy. That sometimes that's the reward. That you made someone else a little happier. So, that's what it is. This whole project is a labor of love. It's a labor of love. And I love getting the information out if I can to get it to people. And I'm proud of that time. And I'm proud of the photographs that I got. And you put them up on your wall and, it's a piece of art. So it really was a special time.
Awesome. And I'll end here because Doug Goldstein says hi, because I'm helping him write his book currently. And he said something very similar to you just now, how he will randomly talk to fans like in Facebook Messenger just for a few minutes just to make them happy. He's like, knowing that I made their day makes me feel good. And that's exactly what you just said to me.
Doug Goldstein was the Jedi Knight of the Jedis. Okay. He was he was Yoda. There was nobody even close. If you take the top 10 people that can, manage a band, and he was the road manager at the time before he was manager, that could do that, fill that job. And you say, well, list them here. And, Led Zeppelin's guy, this guy, that guy. You have Doug, and then you have 6 blank spots. And the number 7 might be somebody that worked for Led Zeppelin or somebody. Doug was just on top of his game. Not only was he the road manager, if somebody threw something on stage, like a bottle or something wet, Doug would dive there, clean that up, not the roadie on the side of the stage. If Axl jumped into the crowd, it wasn't the roadie that jumped in. It was Doug Goldstein that jumped in and risked everything for. If there was a girl that ended up on the tour bus and ended up in the next city, I remember I was on the bus with them. My wife and I flew out to Giant Stadium to see, which turned out to be the Paradise City video shoot in '88. And of course, why was I going? Because Aerosmith was there, and who else? Wow, Deep Purple. You can't beat that lineup. So we flew out there, but we didn't have plans on going with them to the next gig. And the next gig was in Washington. or somewhere. Was it Washington? I think it was in Washington. And they said, "Hey, you want to come?" And I said, "All right." And so we had to rent a car, and I'm like, I got it. What am I going to do? He said, "Give me the keys." He gets on his walkie-talkie, says 2 words to somebody. Someone comes running over, he gives him the keys, and now that car has been returned. I'm on the bus. There was only one spot left to sleep. So my wife and I it was my wife at the, no, it wasn't my wife, it was my girlfriend at the time. We slept in this little bunk that, if you've ever seen in a tour bus, is not even really made for one person, but 2 people slept in that. Anyways, long story short, the next morning we're in the next city. I think it was Washington. No, it was in Maryland. It was Maryland. And I see Doug Goldstein pull out $200, pull out a wad of cash and peel off $200, hand to this, and says, "This is back to to New Jersey." She's seen me. She was like,
"Oh, you're cutting out on the good part. It's cutting out on the good part."
Doug was done with that girl. He didn't want, he wanted to make sure she got back to wherever the hell's from, and he just like so sharp. He was just right on it. There was no way. And I'm going to say one more funny story. When they played, okay, so Doug was fired on the road, and while they were probably with Alice Cooper, and Axl had fired Colin, the previous manager. And so, on a whim, they got Doug Goldstein, and I didn't know who he was. He didn't know who I was. And so they were playing Perkins Palace 4 nights, coming back to Los Angeles at the end of '87. And I just, for whatever reason, they got me a pass or whatever, but I didn't have a laminated pass, so I couldn't go backstage, or I don't know, whatever it was. They gave me his tickets to get in, but they didn't hook me up properly. And so I just made my own pass. I saw what the passes were. And what it was the inside, they actually literally took the inside cover of the Appetite for Destruction tape. They cut it with the scissors and laminated it. That was the backstage pass. So I made one for me and my wife. And not only that, they put a picture of you, laminated in it with it, right? And the back part of it. So I did it. We walk in, I guess just in backstage. It was the next day. The first day we got screwed, but the next day I walk in there, and we're just walking, minding our own business, and this guy comes running like a radar, and he knew we weren't supposed to be there because he didn't know who the hell we were, and we had passes, and he shot right to us, grabbed the pass, turned it over, and it was like he couldn't believe there was a picture of us, and he was like, "Who are you?" Because any pass he would have made, and he was like, "How'd you do this?" And I said, "I'm Slash's friend, blah blah blah." "Oh, Marc Canter, I know who you are. How'd you do this?" And I told him. He just couldn't believe that I was that resourceful to make my own pass. But after that, after that, I always had a pass for. They didn't have to worry about backstage passes. But Doug was just right on top of his game. There was just, the band would have fallen apart or gone to jail or all of the above if he wasn't there handling everything that was going wrong. And he was there's a show about that. What's that guy now? What's the name? God, I know you know the show. It's like on HBO. Problem Solver guy.
Problem Solver
It'll
guy.
come to me. It doesn't matter.
Because I don't have HBO.
Ray
Donovan.
What's the name?
Ray Donovan.
Yes. He
That's
was
Showtime.
Yeah.
I know of it.
Oh, Showtime. So he's the problem solver, right? You got a problem, he solves your problem. Doug Goldstein was solving problems constantly.
Yeah.
Just right on it.
Me being
right on it. Hitting the nail on the head every
time. Now me being where you were and Jack and Lou was, riding Reckless Road, I'm on the cutting room floor, seeing all the stories, and I can't wait for it to get it out, down the road. I'm on your side of the fence now, but I really appreciate what you've been doing for fans and for hungry patrons for all these years. It's a pleasure. I didn't expect you to keep you this long, but once you get off on a story, I just want to shut up and let you finish and hear it. So there's just too many stories. So I hope there's more than 5 seasons, but if it's only 5, we'll take it. That's okay. It was only
people always ask what's your favorite story. They're looking for like the backstage dirt. I said there is no backstage dirt. The favorite story is the goosebumps I got from the music or from this gig or from that gig. That's my favorite story when they pushed winning a crowd over that wasn't there to see them, or debuting a song. That's, to me, they're looking for something that backstage with naked girls, this that. That's not my favorite story.
No.
That's
When I ask, so I'll ask you your favorite story, but what I mean by that is, what made you laugh? Is there one back there that you're like, oh, this is such a funny moment that happened? This is just, is there anything that was just a fond memory? Nothing sensationalistic, but something that, you look back and like, oh, wow, we were young and silly, or, this was so funny. I saw Slash naked running. I don't know.
this might not be, well, one time, okay, I'll tell you two quick ones. One time I had him at Canter's. It was Hollywood Roast. So Slash and Axl were here with their girlfriends, and the food's always on the house. But I make it. I don't have anyone wait on them. I just go back there, make the food, and bring it out. So I got their order back. I was making the food. I come out. Oh no, I know they already had the food, but I left because people call me. They tap them. Hey, this is that. Blah blah blah. When you're in Canter's, you're working whether you like it or not. So I come back to the table after being gone for like 5 minutes, and they decided they were going to have a food fight. And so there was food all over, ketchup, mustard, burgers, whatever, shakes, whatever they were eating was all over they threw it all over the place. And I was really pissed because, it's a place of business and they were horsing around and they know you don't do that. That gets you thrown out. So I was so pissed off that I took a whipped cream cake that we have in the bakery and I took it and I put it right in Slash's face. But I don't think he might, because it's a whipped cream cake. That's
a fantasy. I want to do that to myself.
Whipped cream cake. So you can't go bad, but still it's a mess. It's in your hair, Slash's hair. Try to wash that out. Good luck.
True.
But I will tell you a funny story. It's not necessarily Guns N' Roses related, but I'm sure if I think about it, there will be lots of good stories to tell. But this is a me and Axl story. So I had a friend when we were young that was way into guns, and we go shooting on Saturday, target shooting, not anything crazy, but we go to Pasadena and we'd shoot. And so I bought a couple of guns and whatever. So now Axl finds out I have these guns and he wants to go shooting. So we find this place in Palmdale that it's just desert, and you could bring some targets out there, the clay pigeons or whatever, and have fun, shoot bottles, whatever. So we went one time and we had a good time. And like 6 months later, he bought this Tonka truck toy. When I say a Tonka truck, he was driving it. It was like a Jeep, a souped up Jeep. It was probably around 88 when they weren't millionaires yet, but they probably had like, $500,000. So they had enough money to buy a good car. So anyways, he said we can, we always had to leave at sundown because there's no lights out there. So, or when the sun starts to go down. So he says, I got this truck and look, I got these lights above here and we could stay longer if we want, because we could light it up. And so anyways, long story short, we go out there and we're in the middle of nowhere. We're miles away from anything because otherwise you can't shoot, because the bullet can come down and hurt somebody. And Axl brings these TVs that are no longer good because they broke for one reason or another. Who knows why they broke, but they broke. And, you always want to shoot a TV and see what happens. But anyway, so we're getting to the story now. We get out there, we have our fun, we shoot. Now we want to go home, right? We're done. We want to go home. Guess what? Axl lost his keys to the car, to the truck. So now, and we don't have cell phones, we don't have beepers, we don't have anything, right? So, or we might have a beeper. That's useless because you can't call anyone. But we're screwed. The sun's going down. It's getting dark. And his keys are not in the car and they're not in his pocket. So now we have to double back everywhere we were walking, and it's kind of like sand and dirt and some mountains, and we're backtracking a lot of, and we're walking here, we're walking there. It's getting dark, and my wife's great. They shot each other. They're dead, or they got or they got in a shootout with somebody. What's going on? You're going to be home before sundown because it gets dark, and it's like 8 o'clock at night. What's going on? She's thinking, what the hell's going on? So, end the story. So I see Axl's walking on this ridge, like a mountain ridge, and he's got these boots on. He's cowboy boots or whatever, and I guess his pants were in the boots, not out of the boots, but in the boots maybe, or maybe he was wearing. I don't know, but for whatever reason, the keys fell out of his pocket and had fallen in the boot. and he is just realizing that there's like a rock in his boot and it's bothering him. So he's reaching in his boot to like pull out this rock that's bothering him, and he comes up with the keys. So it's not necessarily a Guns N' Roses story, but if you tie in my wife's worrying about us, and it's dark, it's way dark, 9 o'clock at night now, and if you tie that all into some, and if he didn't find those keys, we would have been there just stuck. I mean, we'd have to like start walking, like 5 or 10 miles to get out of there to find like somebody to help us, or so that's just I've never told the story, but it just jumped in my head because my wife tells it all the time. It's making fun of us, but
I love it because it's worrying. Like if my fiance is a half an hour late from work, I'm like, oh, she's dead on the side of the road. It's just I get the Jewish mother worry. So I understand that. And then Axel just, like everybody, where are my glasses? Oh, they're on my head. It's like one of those situations. So he's just like the rest of us. Marc, I've kept you way longer than I thought I would. Thank you for your time. Unless there's anything else you want to say, or it's the 51st gigs. And again, I think you were cutting out them, but it's on Facebook, it's on Twitter, it's on Instagram. Updates. You can cite and subscribe to the newsletter and get any information about the podcast and future seasons. Right?
Right. Yeah, sure. 51stgigs.com is a place to go for all that information. So it will direct you to whatever you need to do.
All right. Cool. Well, I see plates. I hear plates being smacked together. So I don't know if you have to run to the kitchen and take care of some business.
No. I do. I didn't eat yet today, so I'm coming back the day after my son's wedding. I was catching up, and so my stomach is talking to me right now. So I'm going to go have a bite.
Let me say that Mazel Tov to your son. I saw those photos on Instagram. Congratulations. Go have a nosh. Thank you so much, Marc, for your time.
See you next time.
You got it. So that was fun. I always tell myself, I may have said this before, I'll tell a guest, hey, maybe half hour, 45 minutes. Half hour goes by so quick. So in my head, I'm always thinking an hour. And then it's almost an hour and a half. But you never know. So I want some feedback on that. When I did the Hard School review, which was only 20 minutes, that great numbers. Then I did the Baltimore review, the last episode, which was over 2 hours. Also amazing numbers. So I don't know. Do you like short episodes? Do you like long episodes? I don't know. The fact that you're coming back here, I think, is great. So sorry for any of the technical difficulties. I'll do my best to edit that on the audio side of it all. But that's just part of the game. He's zooming from a booth in Canter's Deli, and right now I have to fight off my cat from eating plastic. GB, no, wait for me to feed you. I love it. Live podcasting. So thanks for hanging out. I know a lot of you are looking forward to this episode with Marc Canter. And what's great with this episode with Marc and all the upcoming episodes are guests that I've been working on for months. And sometimes things just it's not always like, hey, can I interview you? Oh yeah, tomorrow works. That rarely happens. So Marc, I hit him earlier up this year, and he said, let's get the 51st gigs off the ground and we'll reconvene. That's what this is. And the next episode you're most likely going to hear will be with Andrew Stockdale of Wolf Mother. I've been following up on that since February. I heard back in February, oh, Andrew would love to do it. I never heard anything back since. So every few months, I'm trying to either navigate between the psycho ex-boyfriend or just a polite, friendly reminder. Hey, is Andrew still interested? Turns out he is. I think, as Axel says, nothing is confirmed, unless it happens. So that should be on the way. Andrew Stockdale. So I've been working on that for months, and also another one I've been working on for a while. Michael Ryan. You may not know the name, but he is a writer for Scooby-Doo. Now, if you don't know why Scooby-Doo matters, are you really a Guns N' Roses fan? That was the last time, prior to the, reunion, we didn't see Axel for a while. Then all of a sudden we see him on an episode of Scooby-Doo. So he's jumping from Looney Tunes to Scooby-Doo, had a Looney Tunes episode. So it looks like I'm going to have a Scooby-Doo episode of Appetite for Distortion, which is something to really look forward to. And also, I've been getting so many positive reviews and feedback and submissions for the concert reviews. which are now over because as of today, as I'm recording this, GN'R they finished their last tour, their last leg of the tour for this year. So what I'm gonna do most likely is have a few of you on for a tour review because it just didn't make any sense to keep doing. I thought because some of the reviews leading up to when Hard School was debuted, it's like, are we really going to talk about a show that doesn't have Hard School yet when this is where all what we're talking about? But now there are some cool things to talk about, not just Hard School and Absurd, but Wolfgang Van Halen joining for Paradise City on GN'R on stage a couple times, and just the tour overall. So I think I'm going to grab a few of you who have submitted, and we'll do kind of a wrap up of this tour leg review because those episodes have been so fun. So those are a few to look forward to, right? So we got Andrew Stockdale, Wolf Mother. Then we got Michael Ryan from Scooby-Doo. And then we have a review episode, a wrap-up review tour. And that's only a few of the episodes that are coming on Appetite for Distortion. So much like what Marc is doing, this is a labor of love. You know, I'm lucky to have an actual radio job. I have a secondary job. Actually, we're selling some of my old vintage toys to pay for our wedding next year. That's a story for another time. You wouldn't believe what some of these old school toys go for. Jeez. And I got to go feed my cat. He's scratching the couch. So anyway, but how you can support and not buy me a new couch. We'll get a new one ourselves. You know, the cat has scratched up everything. You can never get anything nice if you have cats. Is we have a Patreon. You can donate there. Follow and subscribe. Tell friends. The more our numbers go up, you know, especially on YouTube, that's where the ad dollars come in. Or this is something I always want to put out there. If you, because we talk to fans across the, entire work spectrum, life spectrum. If you have a business that you feel would make sense to advertise on Appetite for Distortion, let me know. Hit me up. Facebook, the new Twitter at the AFD Podcast, email the AFD Show at gmail.com. Anyway, I'll respond. I'll respond to you. And always, of course, is talking GN'R. I do my best to respond to all of you who just like the BS about GN'R throughout the day in DMs. That's my life now. Anyway, so that does it for this episode of Appetite for Distortion. When will you see the next one? In the words of Axl Rose concerning Chinese democracy, you'll see it. I don't know if soon is the word.